Hello everyone. Welcome to another roundtable discussion. Today we're going to talk about the power of coaching. What is coaching? Maybe where therapy is necessary, maybe how energy work plays in coaching. So great to see you. Hi, Matthew. How are you?
I'm good, Myrna. It's a very incredible time that we're having right now.
Yes.
Just approaching up to the Lion's Gate. If any of you
Oh,
guys
very
know, we're at the
good.
Lion's Gate, and that's there are many different times in the year that have these energy peaks and troughs. But
Mhm.
in my own personal hologram, this one seems to be the most impactful, and it's one that's kind of overlooked by much of the spiritual community.
Very
But the
good.
Lion's Gate is when the star Sirius lines up with the Sphinx in Egypt, and
Oh,
it's on the 8th of the 8th, and it's always I won't say always. Let's say it can be traumatic.
well, we have so much energy stuff going on from that eclipse and other things.
hmm
We'll just keep letting all the energy work us.
hmm
So,
More upon more upon more. That's what it's like at the moment.
how are you doing, Jonathan? How is California
Hey,
treating you?
namaskaram,
Yeah.
everyone.
Mhm.
California, it's actually right now, it's not hot. It's still early, so hopefully it's going to warm up. Um, we need more global warming because it's too cold at this time.
In California, just give us a couple of
It's
cups
summer.
more.
It's summertime. We need. It's great. So thank you for having me here.
I think
It's a
that it was
pleasure.
Mark Twain who said the coldest winter he ever spent was a summer in the San Francisco area.
Really.
So you get that fog in, you get that wet air cold.
Yes, it's where I live, for example, is like 45 to an hour north from San Francisco. So even if it's like super hot at night, it
Yeah,
becomes cold.
yeah, the
Like
water
desert
comes in
nights.
from the bay and just cools it all off.
Mhm.
Yeah. You know, in Texas, it's the opposite. I had trouble getting used to it because growing up in the California Bay Area, when the sun goes down, everything cools off because now you have the ocean is here in Texas. When the sun goes down, it's still getting hotter. Like the ground is still returning the heat it absorbed
Yeah.
all day. So it's like it's 7 o'clock at nighttime and it just raised 5 degrees. What is with Texas?
Hey,
It
it
gets
sounds
hotter
like the
till like
promised
9 or
land.
10, and then it starts to cool off. Yeah.
It's like that over here. It's so humid as well. And at the moment, it's coat on, coat off weather at the moment. So jacket on, jacket off, jacket on, jacket all throughout the day. So as soon as the sun's out, it's nice. But as soon as a cloud comes over, oh, it's just that little bit too nippy. It's a
Yeah,
strange weather. But
exactly.
we have the same phenomenon where when the sun goes down, all the buildings start to give off the heat that they've gained all day long, and the
Mhm.
tarmac from the roads, and
Yeah,
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 it just keeps going.
yeah. Okay. Well, it's so nice to see you too. This is one of my favorite subjects, the power of coaching, because I'm kind of an evangelist about coaching. And I guess that makes sense since we participate in a group of coaches that help other people get coaches. And Maddie, I'll ask you to remind me to be sure that before we sign off, everyone says how to get a hold of you.
hmm
So let's go and get started. I'm going to share my screen, and then I have a few slides to kind of share a quote here or there or some thoughts on coaching. And so here we go with my screen share. Okay, fingers crossed. Myrna's working with technology. Okay, here we go. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, present. Can you guys see that? Oh,
Yeah.
there we go.
Yes, now I can.
Okay, cool.
Now
So
I can.
we're going to talk about the power of coaching today. And, coaching as a profession is almost 30 years old now, but I still find people who say, coaching, you mean like sports? So it's like, not exactly. So here's a quote that I wanted to share, and this is from a therapist that Angela on our team sometimes refers clients to. And she talks about coaching versus therapy, like which spot are you in? Which is the first direction you should go? And Marilyn Marinucci here says, others will give you tips and tools, meaning coaches. They're about action and results. I'll help you deal with the parts of yourself that won't use them. So if you are hiring a coach and you think now that you've hired the coach, everything gets better without you bringing your whole self to the process, maybe coaching isn't the next step for you. But I thought that was a good distinction. So I think I have two more slides and then we'll just open our discussion. Yeah. Okay, so sometimes people ask me this question, what kind of coaches are there? And because the profession is about 30 years old, a lot of people are familiar, if they have coaches, that there's life coaches, then there's executive coaches to help you solve challenges at work, maybe career coaches, and they, don't really expand beyond that. So I made a short list, and I'll have you guys sort of chime in too about how you express any coaching or teaching or support that you offer, how you speak about yourself to clients. Executive coaches offer support in the professional work world, and I do some of that. Life coaches sort of engage in relationship stuff. They help people with dating, with family squabbles, with how you're not getting along with stepchildren, that kind of thing, sort of your personal life. I do some of that. Career coaches obviously help with job search, resume. If you want to do a career change, or you're trying to get a promotion, you've been passed over and you're wondering, should you go someplace else? Spiritual coaches and energy coaches, which I kind of think you two are more in that category, can bring clarity about faith, philosophy, the seen or unseen and subconscious areas of your life, which is a little bit murky for people, I think. Health and nutrition coaches obviously improve your body, your vitality, your immune system. And then financial coaches work with clients about money, budget, investments, retirement planning. So because coaching is about 30 years old, there's a lot of different kinds. So that's it about coaching. And I'll stop sharing. And I don't know, Maddie, you want to start us off? Kind of how do you explain what you do with clients?
Well, there's a lot there, isn't there? We're in an era where we now have coaches, which just tells you how many different coaches there are out there, and it just seemed to be a badge of honor. And it's not difficult to navigate your way around what works and what doesn't work. Trial and error as always. You find what works for you. But for me, I'm quite fortunate. Where hey Zian.
What's up, man?
I'm going to let Manny finish his answer.
Yeah, so I'm in a fortunate arena. Was if you are, because when it said initially coaching and therapy, so to me therapy, what comes up in my mind and what we're speaking about here is like psychotherapy, right?
Right.
So what comes up in my mind when I hear the word therapy, I think of physiotherapy or physical, because that's the majority of the therapy that I would be involved in. We're actually working with the body itself and releasing it from the trauma from within the body and the fascia, the muscle, all these different parts like that. So there are different types of therapy. But the distinction between the two that you're asking and the question is how I do. I'm lucky, whereas I don't so much have to be accredited in any one particular thing. So if you learn a discipline or you learn a style or a technique or some form of therapy or coaching, you have to stick to that narrative. But I'm quite fortunate where I don't have to stick to a narrative. So with me, it's kind of the combination of the two of those things. And it depends how much. I mean, you and I, our relationship started much on the coaching basics, right? I mean, you're a coach yourself, and you wanted me to deliver something to you in a way that you could understand and what you were comfortable with.
Can I have a consultation instead of
Exactly.
what you normally do? So you said, I'll talk to you. Like, okay,
Yeah.
great.
And then we just slid in some of the other unseen elements as we went along. And so that's kind of it, really. For me, it works a bit of both ways. And because if you're going in with somebody, I mean, there's so many people that they have certain issues, but before they can tackle that issue, there are the precursors to tackling that issue. If some people just need to get some actual spiritual energy back, some physical energy, some money energy, whatever it is, they need to look at those character flaws in their life, get a grip on those, and then begin to ask the bigger questions. And so quite often on my sessions, there'll be someone who's in need of a healing, and I can do the unseen elements of it, but I know that just given time, that will come back again, because they're still in the same situation that created that dis-ease in the first place. So for me, then it goes to a coaching session. I'll do what I can for you for now to give you some space, to give you some breathing time so you can look at these things for a while and hopefully assimilate them. But it's a hit and miss.
I appreciate that. We're going to turn to you, Jonathan, in a second, but there is a maintenance quality to the coaching that we offer. whether someone adopts a meditation or a prayer practice. It's just like if you go get fit at the gym and then you stop going. Over time, you've lost that level of fitness. There's a maintenance component to these things. And maybe it's less obvious when it's rituals or practice or tools and modalities that you have to sort of weave into your regular routines in order to maintain the gains that you have in the life changes you're making. So, Jonathan, do you want to respond to your thoughts about how do you tell people that you're a coach? I know you're a hypnotherapist, but you call yourself a guy.
Yes, well, one of the reasons, I am a certified alchemical hypnotherapist,
Yes,
but
yes.
one of the reasons why I don't want to go that route of like therapy per se is
Mhm.
because I know it's like a bad word, therapy. It's like it has become like a bad word.
Like you must
So
be making mistakes or you're some kind of loser because you're in therapy. So
and also no, and more than, yes, part of it, yes, but more than that, in my experience, is because if you're a therapist, you have to go through certain training, especially some specific training, which in most cases involves the education system. And then if you want to play by their rules and keep people coming to you every week, you have to use their terms and conditions.
Yes.
And that is something that I'm not into. Like,
Yes.
So coming back to the difference between coaching and therapist. So actually, you mentioned that somebody came up with a study that 30 years ago was created, but I disagree completely with whoever made that
Oh, they
statement.
created the first opportunity to become certified and to call it a
Yeah.
profession.
So I
So they
believe
sort
that
of entered
coaching,
the corporate world about 30
yeah.
years
So
ago.
I believe that coaching is such an ancient
Oh, of course.
thing. So for me, coaching is the word might be new, but the essence of it, which is to like teach or to train someone. Actually, the definition on the dictionary, because I had to look at it, I'm like, what's the actual? Like, it's so simple. It's like a trainer of a performer or a team. And in reality, we're all performers, whether we like it or not. Anyways, so we are performing actions. We are performing everything. We are performers. So coaches have been always there. Back in the day, there were shamans, or like the main guy
Still
of the
today,
tribe.
because we have one with us.
Yes, so he knows what I'm saying. So it's a very ancient thing. Now they wanted to make it fancy, and that's why there are so many crappy ones out there, because that's the truth. So yes, I believe that it is important, if you want to accelerate the process of growth, to put the ego aside and be truth to yourself. How fast do I want to learn something? And what is it that I need to learn? Because if someone comes to me for coaching to teach them trigonometry, I'll be like, I cannot coach you. I'm ignorant on that topic. I can't. But there's someone that will coach them on that realm. So there's always someone for you when it comes to coaching. And I believe that it's a great way to grow like so fast.
That's wonderful.
It's like
yeah. Well,
Can I
and
chime in? Can I chime in a minute, Myrna?
yes,
You know,
please do.
Jonathan, you say like back in the day there were shamans, and that's what's missing to some of this, isn't it? It's that, and it doesn't have to be called a shaman. It's that therapy as we know it, where people go and they talk to somebody and they begin to go deep and expose parts of themselves and just get them to, in their own words, describe their story. That's what we do at the fire, and that's what we do we do the same thing. But so, and I noticed, because I myself, I struggled with all kinds of addictions and things throughout my life, and alcohol was a big one for me. And I attended AA for a while, and I noticed there that the people that were there, they were trying to achieve the same thing I was in my own personal journey, my own inner spiritual workings. They were all trying to get to the same place I was, not just alcohol related, but there's something else there. And I noticed that the programs that were running in these people were satiated by turning up to these groups continuously over and over and addressing the subject matter over and over and over. And it seemed like I was able, and I've seen this with my own eyes in other people and in my own journey, where you can progress for, decades of trauma in 2 years of dedicated practice if you get it right and combine all of the different factors, not just go down one road, but combine them all together. And so that's what seems to be happening, is that therapy brings out the issues, but I think as a species we need some spiritual alchemy, right? To actually put it to bed, rather than just bringing it up. And that seems to be what's not taught in the modern form of it. It's about exposure, but there's no actual spiritual alchemy behind it. I'm not saying there isn't. There are therapists out there that have figured their own way out, their own way of doing it, I'm sure. I'm not one, so I wouldn't know.
Oh, I appreciate that feedback. Zian, I want to introduce you and catch you up a little bit, but the person that taught me EFT here in Austin, the tapping, which is a kind of energy therapy, when she learned how to do emotional freedom technique, she had been a psychotherapist for 20 some years, and she stopped doing psychotherapy with her clients because in her mind, she was getting results in 6 months or 9 months. And with EFT, she was getting results in 3 sessions or 4 sessions.
Yes.
And so she just shifted her practice to full-time EFT doing energy work. And it's not that she didn't serve her clients before, but she had grown like professional fatigue about how long it took to get results. And I think we've all seen in energy work, it changes. Now, does the change stick? That's the question, but you get the change. So, okay, well, Zian, welcome. It's great to see you out in California as well. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, I came in a little late because I meant to actually get up earlier, so I didn't have to come in late and feel a bit frantic over, getting things organized before I jumped in. But, I overslept a bit, so I was like, oh, damn, I had to adapt and compensate and do things really quickly, and now I'm here.
Isn't it funny, like when we have to practice the resilience that we teach clients to have, it's like, oh, I guess it's my turn to eat my own cooking right now. I get to show up and do the things I help other people learn how to do. So, well, I wanted to share this quote because as a mental wellness coach, I think you're in this lane a lot. There is a therapist we shared a quote with, and she said, you come to a therapist when the tools and the techniques, when the action plan or what have you that a coach is providing, you're not stepping up and doing the steps. You're not finding yourself able to do whatever it is that would execute the change. And so her job is kind of get to the bottom of how does she get you to first base so that you'll begin. What's between you and making those changes or getting started? And so she thinks that's the lane for therapy. Sometimes it might be the first step and coaching as a second step. And I think we've had people who we've laid out a path, this is what you need to do. And it's 3 steps or 5 steps, step 3, they're feeling a little better and they quit. And then it's like, I'm good for now. I don't super want to solve it. I just want it to be less miserable. Okay, that's where you are. And I think there might be more going on than just taking actions to get results, which is kind of the lane of coaching. So yeah, so I'd love to get your feedback when you talk with people. How do you share your coaching, how your coaching is available to clients? What do you call yourself, or what do people that refer to you call you?
So I go by mental wellness coach, but if people prefer to call me a life coach or, a relationship expert, that's also fine. It doesn't necessarily matter, just as long as people aren't calling me a therapist, because I'm not a licensed therapist.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of the same knowledge as licensed therapists. However, I am not a licensed therapist, so that's where I draw the line. As long as people aren't referring to me as a therapist, then we're cool. But you could also address me as a solution-oriented coach. So I've said this before. I help my clients gain access to solution-oriented thinking that allows them to look at their problems within a certain spectrum of context and they have access to insight that they never had before, and they can put that into practice potentially, as long as they are putting forth the effort and the work to do so. So I've learned 2 or 3 different modalities when it comes to how I approach coaching. So I don't know if you've heard of coherence therapy, but I wouldn't say that I use coherence therapy, but coherent, how would I say it?
Aspects.
Coherence modality coaching, so like that. Coherence therapy is when a therapist helps their client bring their shadows and aspects of themselves that they're unaware about into the light. So those things come to the surface so that they're aware of them, so that the patterns are less likely to be repeated now that we're aware of them and we see what's going on, rather than just kind of tripping around in the dark and not having that level of insight into our own habits and choices and the belief systems that often underlie these behaviors and these patterns of thinking and relating. Where was I going with this?
Well, I appreciate that perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I bring to the table. And also, stop me if I'm going on for a bit too long, because if I am, I can get back into this and bring this up again. But an article that I went over that you thought would be good for bringing up in this discussion, and it was exactly revolving around the same thing that we're talking about. Excuse me, I had some phlegm in my throat. The title of it was The Difference Between Coaching and Therapy. And oftentimes what coaches tend to do is just bring tips and tools to the table to help you deal with things, whereas a therapist actually helps you deal with aspects of yourself that you're rubbing up against and that are creating friction in your own life. So that's where I differ from many coaches. I'll give you tips and tools, best believe that, but I also teach you how to deal with these parts of yourself that you have rejected, minimized, or are gaslighting due to voices that you've internalized from as a result of cultural norms or the experiences that you've had with other people in your life. I will teach you how to deal with those aspects. And one of the things that was brought up in this article, it's relatively short too, it's not long, but that's also, those are very well-read articles as well. They're not long and they're just kind of straight to the point, and they're not time consuming. So what this part of the theme of this article was that oftentimes we want to change something in our life, but there's an aspect of us that's in resistance to change because these patterns and behaviors that and the belief systems and the rationale as to why we behave that way, they bring comfort and familiarity and safety. So we're in resistance to change because there's something that we're avoiding, some type of pain or frustration, or as I said, there's some type of safety or security behind the behavior that we are projecting and embodying.
Yeah, I agree with you there that it does help you uncover things that are, we're blind to for whatever reason we can't see. And Jonathan, I want to take this to you. You do some relationship coaching for men. I understand that's a component of what your practice is. Is that right?
So one of my specialties is like a signature of the house.
Okay.
The main dish.
Okay. Well, we all have friends who say, I'm just not getting along with my current romantic partner. And the friends are thinking, it's like your last 3 romantic partners. Is this Bob or Frank or Phil? But they're the same person. You know, it's just this one's taller, this one's a little shorter, but you keep repeating a pattern over and over. And I think in kind of the energy work that you do, as well as that Maddie does, is it's like a secret back door past these patterns, you know, that are invisible to you. So do you work with men who are repeating a pattern about the kind of women that they date or the kind of problems that they have in developing a romantic relationship? And then are you using your hypnosis to kind of interrupt that pattern? Tell me about that.
That is a great way to put it. Using hypnosis to disrupt the pattern. And one of the main things that I will do it's to pinpoint where the damage comes from. Let's say, I'm in a sexless marriage, and I'm like, okay, that's not the problem. That is like the problem is like many layers before. So once you go down and take them to like the origin of their story, in some instances you will find that like when they were like 3-year-old, they were rejected by their mother, like somehow. And when you're a kid, you cannot tell the difference between your mother being like, hey, I'm busy, I'm cleaning the house, I have to cook, I have so many things to do. You do not know that she's just not rejecting you as like, I don't ever want to see you again and you're stuck and you're horrible as a man. But you take it literally because the subconscious mind, it takes everything literal. There's no positive or negative. It just takes everything as it comes. So when you're a petite baby and you have one of those experiences, especially with men, at some point in their life, they felt extremely rejected, and it stays with them. So then time goes on, they think everything is fine, and it starts manifesting in many. It starts subtle until it's not subtle, and then they can't deal with it anymore. So it is extremely important, yes, to deal with the underlying trauma. That's the thing, because there's always, without exception, there's always a underlying trauma for what someone is experiencing. And we all have been traumatized, whether we like it or not. From the moment a doctor pulls your head out of your mother's from the mother you come out of like the womb, it's you're experiencing some kind of something. It's so subtle that it might sound like not a big deal, but the reality of it, in my experience, analyzing myself and also like working with other humans, you will find out that every single detail, it matters so much, because for everybody it's different. Let's say,
well, and I do think as you work with clients, you talked about the layers where, you know, therapists like to say, clients present me with this, but this is what we're really working on. It's a thing that's hidden behind. And so once we get this out of the way, then we get to deal with whatever it was where this came from. And it's invisible to the client. So it's not like they're keeping a secret. They just don't know why this dysfunction is happening. And they've tried things that have helped a little, but haven't solved it or what have you. So it's wonderful to know that you can work with people in the deeper layers.
And one of the things with hypnosis, for the ones that do not know, because somebody might be watching now and it's completely unaware of what I'm doing, with alchemical hypnosis, which is, I will take someone to, like, let's say I can take someone so deep back to past lives, but that's not what I like to do. I don't mess with them because they have no value on this one. So it's a realm that it's, I leave that for someone else that wants to do that work. I just take them to like the deepest layer that they can possibly remember. And there's always something there. So once you make the change, because with alchemical, what happens is it's like quantum physics, simplified, like quantum physics for dummies, or like a book, something. You make a change in your experience once you're under hypnosis state. You make a change. Let's say I take you back to the time when you were rejected by your mother when you were 3 years old. Then, as a higher self guide, first I will introduce you to your higher self. Then we take the higher self with you, and then we confront the situation. At that time you were 3, but now you have your higher self with you. How does it feel? Oh, it's not that bad. It's not that horrible. What do you have to say to the mother? Because she might probably said something horrible. Who knows? Every human is different. So if she was actually mean, we confront her, and then the client and this is when it gets a little intense, because sometimes they want to like kill her, sometimes they want to punch her in the face. For everybody is different. And they make a change back. It's like going back to the past, but the change that they made in their emotional state and their vibration, that's when the alchemy comes into play. Because in their present time, the change that they made in the past, it actually impacts their present life. So the next experience that they have after that with a woman, it's more pleasant. There's no way it cannot. And from there, there's also a process after. But from there, the main change, the pattern was disrupted. So now they don't think, oh, women reject me, they don't like me. Now they think women are beautiful and they love me and they are like the cutest creatures on the planet. And then they look at women and the women react to them different, because they think, oh, they think I'm cute, and their whole reality changes.
Their whole approach to it is different. Well, one of the things that's nice about hypnotherapy is that you can tell yourself a story about why it worked. And so you're like, oh yeah, I found this problem in my past, and with Jonathan, I sort of confronted it. So it makes sense to my rational mind why this energy work worked. And so, and the clients I've referred to you have said, yes, this is better. I did deep work with Jonathan and it's better. I'm going to turn to you, Maddie, now, because sometimes the experience of working with you is, I don't know what he did, but I can tell you this problem and this thing over here, they've evaporated. Like, I don't know what happened. So their rational mind may not be able to put together the process you were in. Like, it was less obvious in terms of a conscious mind participation. But I get feedback where people say, the ex-wife who's brutalizing me in the courts and withholding the children reached out to me, and she has said okay to this new schedule for co-parenting. And I don't know what happened, except I welcome it. But there's no straight line for their mental processing to say, I took these steps and this changed. But they make the connection that I feel different and the experience of my life is different in the area we worked on. So I'm going to take it. But do you want to speak to when people are ready to work with you and how you kind of help them see that these changes happen, but it's not necessarily a straight line or involving mental processing?
Oh, that's a loaded question, Myrna.
Well, this is the experience clients have with you. They bring you something and you say, oh, okay. And then things around them, as they've changed their interior, their exterior reflects that.
It's an interesting mix and match of rationality and non-rationality. So on one hand, I may require a certain part of the rational being in order to accept a certain truth or something, to then have an irrational experience that will allow me a gateway of opening into deeper into the levels and layers that they're allowing me into, or permission slips to go deeper, or belief, or even just an aorta of belief. So it's a very, very expansive question, and there are many different flavors of it. And it's something that really I navigate quite intuitively, rather than have to over process that particular part. It's just a general sense and a feeling. But when I'm listening to these guys, do you mind if I return to the original topic? Because as I was listening to everybody speak, there was...
absolutely. This is what we're exploring in our roundtable today.
Excuse me, I've got such a dry mouth. So when I'm listening to these guys speaking, it's clear that the boundaries between what a therapist is, when we're talking just as in mental therapist, a therapist, and what a coach is, it sounds like they're skewed these days. That a lot of what Zian was talking about as he does as a coach is the same thing a therapist would do. Obviously, he's not claiming an accreditation for anything, and I could claim that actually entirely the same thing myself. A lot of what I do is what a therapist would do. I'm just not accredited to any particular, type of practice. So it seems like it's skewed. But what we're trying to achieve here is making the unknown known. And that's what we strive for. Okay, what am I not getting that I need to get? What's unknown that I need to make known?
Things are invisible. I can't see them.
Exactly, and sometimes those unknowns are actually known. So it's like
you suggesting I'm in denial about something?
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. But sometimes it's the obvious as well. So it's a mixture of what's actually unknown and what is glaringly obvious that one's not looking at. And we all have them, don't we? They come in flashes sometimes of like, oh yeah, I've been carrying that around for how long? And so the therapist part of this, let's say the therapy part of it, not physical therapy but mental therapy, is that inner delve to make the unknown known, or to look at what's being avoided. And when you bring those up, and that always requires somebody else, and all of us need that other perspective to be able to say, hang on, you must look at this part. And then when you do, you explore it, like, oh, I wasn't looking at that. But it was obvious when you look at it then, you're like, oh, of course, obvious. So when you get to that moment, that's what the kind of therapy part of it will do. But then it's like, well, what now? Okay, because there has to be an alchemization process of some description. And then that's where you have the opportunity to look to a plethora of different types of practices. And this is where I'd like to bring in physical therapy, because the body, the mind, the spirit, they all work together in a unity, and you mustn't leave any one part of those out. And so there are some physiotherapies that are just working parts of the body. I know cranial sacral therapy is amazing for this. I've even seen it with the massage guns, and even just general types of healing. Say general healing, you know what I mean by that, just the multi-dimensional experience itself. You see that the body begins to release the trauma, and that's where it's stored.
Yes.
And so sometimes people will go through the emotional journey without actually knowing what emotions they're processing. I've done this before on the table with Laura, and it was an incredibly powerful experience. I'm just shedding tears, shedding
dramatic release. Yes.
I have no concept of what's actually leaving, and that's okay. And that's where the rational mind doesn't need to come in and start imprinting over the top of it.
Right.
Trying to tell it needs to be this or it needs to be that, and just the experience needs to be wherever it actually is, and just allowed to be. But then there are these different ways that we can go to these things, you see, and that's what it's about. It's about, can you make the unknown known? Can you find some way or some person or some way of bringing out what's inside of you to the exterior, so you can look at it from a subjective point of view, and remain neutral and using the skills that you have to tackle them. And if you don't have the skills to tackle these issues, then that's where the coaching you need to go to.
Yes.
From the spiritual perspective, this is where we use the alchem, the fires, the meditations, the imprintations within the body and the blood, the bone marrow, all of these shamanistic things we've been talking about before, you and I, Myrna. And so it's taking that topic that you make, the unknown that's become known, taking that and putting it into your plethora of practices that you have. And it should never just be one thing. Everyone should have a multitude of different practices and each theme will then evolve and grow, and the layers will shed and shed and shed and shed and shed. And so this is where the therapy side of it plays its part, but there must be that other part of it.
I really appreciate that. I have a statistic to share that complicates this idea between therapy and coaches. Before COVID, so in the before times, so 5 or 6 years ago, there was a big change in how insurance paid for therapy, and they just cut it. So there were a lot of active therapists who leased offices, sometimes with other therapists, and all of a sudden their income was cut in half. And so, the clients that they would see for 10 sessions, now their insurance would only pay for 5. And so it's like, wow, what do we do instead? And so from that point on, 50% of the new certified coaches were therapists, because they began also doing coaches. I mean, they could be coaches with one hand tied behind their back, because they're just saying, oh, now we do the part where we take steps and get stuff done. They've already cleared the path with the therapy, and now get stuff, but they get paid cash. The people who hire
Yeah.
coaches pay you $100, $200. You know, their executive team will pay for this coaching for this executive who has a son who overdosed or something, you know, all of a sudden there's this other avenue so they could keep making a living and pay the lease on their building.
And Myrna, this is where we mustn't poo-poo the system. You see, that
Yes.
the system is what the system is. The system is there for a reason,
Yes.
and you can play in the system, or you can allow it to wash over you, or you
Yes.
can be annihilated by it. It's your choice.
Yes.
The
Yes.
system isn't a big, massive, scary monster, and there are advantages to it. And this is where, you know, someone who's done that, if you have that accreditation and you've learned those skills, if you've seen enough clients, you'll have developed a methodology that you can apply to any given subject matter. So you just pick a genre, apply what you've learned to it, boom, you're going, and you're already accredited. So
yeah, as that transition was happening, and it was an economic transition, I worked with some therapists to help them set up their coaching practices. How to have, this is what I do for coaching, and this is what's expected for executive coaching or for personal development coaching, because it's not therapy. And so, so we blurred the lines. And I think one of the other things that blurs the lines, and then I want to turn to you, Zian, is this technology works in a specific way. And so no matter who's helping you, this works in a specific way. And so you could work it with the body. If your orientation is more mental, you can work the logical processing. If you're more heart driven, you can work through the emotional parts of it. But this technology operates pretty uniformly. And so then we find people that are helping people are doing a lot of the same things, because the body and the human experience is pretty standard across, you know, cultures and countries and so on. So we're all helping people, and people have these kinds of things going on. And then we sort of pick the lane that we help in. You know, Zian, I wanted to turn to you about coaching readiness. And, you know, I would warn young coaches that I have mentored that sometimes people think, like in January, when you write a check for the gym, that now all the weight's going to come off and your pecs are going to start showing up. But they skip the part about going to the gym 3 times a week. They think, well, I made the financial commitment, now the magic happens. And so they have to be reminded, guess what? You have to do the reps. You have to lay off the beer. You have to make these changes to get the results you want, not just write the check. And so talking with a client about what are they currently ready to bring to the coaching process. And it may be they're not ready, or it may be what they're ready for is not what you particularly offer. And so you might find someone who's more ready to help them. Some people need to start with their body. Some people need to start with their mind. Some people need to start with an emotional tangle that needs to get unwound, so they have breathing room to do the next thing. So kind of the client intake or the initial brief is to find out, are they ready based on what they're telling me they want to accomplish and what their history is of getting things done. Questions like, well, have you tried to tackle this problem before? I can hear Jonathan saying, you dated 7 Lindas? Is that what happened? And so, yeah, so you want to stop the Linda system? You want to stop that? Okay, I get what you're trying to do. So you want to speak to coaching readiness and kind of how you help a client say, yeah, sounds like this might be the right time for what I can offer you, or nah, not the right time, or not for me. What do you think, Zian?
Yeah, that's a great question. This is where it pays for the coach bringing whatever skills they have to the table to be flexible and have some multidisciplinary knowledge under their belt. For instance, so you know this name. You're familiar with what I'm going to say right now. David Bedrick. We've kind of riffed off of his approach to unshaming and how shame actually it makes trauma worse.
It's a barrier. It's a barrier to healing, the shame.
Yeah. So one of his ideas is that a client need not, and this is an example, a client need not necessarily work on emotional issues directly from the start. They may not be ready to delve into those things. However, they want to, they're more interested in talking about their professional life and how that's working for them and how they can use that to improve as a facet of their healing over time. And I find that actually that clicked in my head the other day. When I had first heard the idea of him talking about that months ago, and I couldn't understand how that worked, and it just clicked in my head all of a sudden, because I realized that's kind of part of what I'm doing. I mean, that's not the only thing that I'm using to improve and get better in my own healing practice, but that's one thing that I'm doing. And I find that through improving in my professional life, it's improving other areas of my life. And so I realized there's a lot of truth to that, and that can be a very effective approach for certain people. Like you wouldn't want to force that on everybody, but if a client, as I said, if a client doesn't feel that they're ready to talk about psychiatric issues and mental disorders just yet, and they'd rather discuss how professional life is helping them and what they can do to use professional life to heal and move forward, then that can be a very effective approach to working for this person on an individual basis. So, and this goes back to what you said, just assessing what will work for the individual and having a variety of skills and insights that will allow you to be flexible in helping this person, whereas you just have a single-minded approach that doesn't serve a wide basis of clients based on individual needs.
Well, I do think, and I would love to have you all chime in on this, that when you start with a client, one of the things I'm listening for is what could an early win look like based on what they're presenting that they're having problems with. You know, is there a little patch of land that we could tidy up that will help fuel their journey and they'll keep going? You know, what is an area where they could have early success? And it may not be that the big thing got handled, but it's progress. And now they're giving themselves permission, now that they're successful at this part, to go to the next part. You know, how do we let you build on this? And sometimes it has nothing to do with what they originally presented to you. So it could be things like, you know, I had a client who was sort of put in the corner in her corporation, and now I've got someone who's misbehaving, and now they have to talk to a coach like punishment. You know, that's always fun. Like, you're in trouble, so now we're going to work together. And her problem in board meetings was she was argumentative. People didn't listen to her, so she talked louder. She wasn't getting along with people because they disrespected her. And now this thing is just cycling. And the first problem we solved was her emails to the Indian engineers that were solving part of her problem in her lab. They just kept missing. You know, she didn't have clear direction. And so then they did not give clear results. It was lost in translation. So we solved her email communication. And she said, like, week 2, I just got an email from Bangalore or wherever, and it's exactly what I asked for. And he's so happy because he understood what I wanted, and his team just delivered it. Like, they solved the miscommunication. And with that little bit, she knew all the rest of it was possible.
Yeah, it's
Because
one
this was
metaphor.
impossible, and it got done, and now this fueled her continued movement. Maddie, go ahead.
It's a metaphor for her that she can now apply as applied wisdom to all of her other
And permission.
disciplines.
She has
Yeah.
permission to continue because this little result happened. What else could happen that's good? Instead
Exactly.
of, I'm in trouble and they're making me talk to this person and I don't want to, and these people are stupid, and why do I work here? You know, she was just kind of in this tangle.
But this is the thing, like, you cannot make people take that step. You cannot make them. You can
You
lead
can
them all
invite
the way
them.
to the water, all the way to the water's edge. You can even push their face in it if you really, 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 really have to.
They're blowing
You
bubbles
can't
in
make
the
them
water,
drink.
but they're not drinking.
Yeah, you know, this is the problem that we have. Unfortunately, in my practice, because I use the energy stuff and all the other things that go on in the background as well, and I find that sometimes once I get a person in a certain state, or we get to a certain type of conversation, because I always let them lead. I don't just pull in and grab things out and say, what about this? What about this? What about this? I may do if there's things on the body or something comes, but generally I will lead them into their own, and it happens usually quite quick. Because once you get somebody in the energetic state, and then we begin the work in the energy worlds, then they become a lot more malleable and a lot less susceptible to the programs, and then those things just kind of come up, you know. And I've had some very, very brave people, you know, and they know that they probably came on with a different subject matter in their mind, but then the moment that they're faced in the session itself, then this other thing will come up and come out. And you know, some very, very brave people. It is unfortunate that so many people do choose to avoid the obvious. If we can just be brave, it just takes a small amount of bravery. You know, more often than not, for all of us. I know we can all apply this to ourselves, not just talking as a coach, whatever, therapist, whatever. You know, is that often the fear of the unknown is so much worse than the actual act of the unknown becoming known. In other terms, like the trepidation comes from the things that we don't want to experience.
Yes.
And we feel the experience, the
I've been
uncomfortableness of
avoiding this for
experience.
30 years and you want me to look at it? Are you kidding me?
And then you do it, and then you're like, oh, that wasn't so bad. And all those people that in your mind were going to scowl at you and were going to call you names, and that shame that was going to come on you doesn't even happen. You're like, oh, well, you know. And that's the kind of thing. It just sometimes it takes these small victories, and they add up one by one to make a big victory. And
part of the value that I see of the three of you here, and I know I found it in my practice also, is the role of compassion for a client who's revealing these things. They have to feel a level of safety with you where they now give themselves permission to tackle the thing they haven't solved. And it's been going on for a year or 30 years. And they don't want to admit that this tangle is here. Or maybe it's like, I've tried 6 other things. What makes you think you, as the 7th thing, are going to work? So if you're in a place of compassion and they can build trust with you, and then they'll say, well, I guess I'll try that, you know? So a common phrase I hear, and chime in if you guys hear this too, is usually halfway through the first meeting, I hear, well, I've never told anybody this before. And then you just wait, because now we're at the thing. I've never told anybody this before. And you're like, excellent, we've relaxed. And now we're actually looking at the thing we probably have to work on. So you guys want to chime in on that?
I won't take too much time, but the obvious one for me is quite often when I start speaking to somebody, and we had this, was the exact same thing happened to you and I the other day. You know, we start to speak, so what's going on? What's going on in your life then? Just as you're getting to know each other, and they'll say something and they'll expose something straight away. And then you just pull at that thread. Well, hang on a minute. Why is that? And then the thread unravels, and and this is how you get to the most obvious things sometimes. They're right there on the tip of everyone's tongue, but they've got all this other deeper stuff that they think is more important.
And living life, your schedule, the people, the work you do for money, all of that stuff can seem complicating. Jonathan, do you have thoughts about when people trust you, when people feel your compassion for them, and how they feel they give themselves permission to work on the thing, whatever the thing is for them?
All the time. Always. There must be trust in order for me to work with someone. There has to be trust. So they have to feel some kind of like you can call it compassion. I don't know. But it comes back to the main thing where Matthew and Zian were saying. They were mixing 2 things. Some people need physical help more, like releasing trauma physically. Some others need emotional first.
Mhm.
The thing with me is I am a higher self guide, so I can connect to the darkest side of themselves,
Mhm.
like once I am with them.
Mhm.
So based on their needs, I can be as harsh as they need, because let me put something clear. Some humans, if you tell them, oh yeah, you go
Oh
boo
no.
boo, you're doing right, that's not going to change anything. So
Mhm.
some humans, you need to actually coach them in a way that they're actually going to respond or like interact with you, and that depends on everybody is different. If I go too harsh on someone that is extremely traumatized, that's not going to help them. So I have to like get in tune with them. Once we are in tune, then I know, okay, this human doesn't need that much like
Mhm.
harshness.
Mhm.
But the ones that, like the men that I have helped, they actually need that. And I actually told one of our coaches, Brian, I
Mhm.
told him, in my area of expertise, I am like the alpha dad they never had, because I am the one that pushes them
Oh.
to their limits. Nobody ever pushed them.
Mhm.
Every time they felt, it was like, oh yeah, it's okay. You were meant to be on the floor forever for the rest of your life.
Mhm.
So I'm like, no.
Mhm.
So it depends. With every client, it's different, but there must be some level of trust, which um, it is there or it's not.
Mhm.
It's very simple.
And
It's
I
the
think
truth.
it's important. Yeah, do you have something, Zian, you want to share about offering a place of a safe space for a conversation, not necessarily that you won't hold them accountable or be strong with them. I have stood and pounded on a desk and yelled more times than I would like to admit
You
to.
have to hold them
This,
accountable, though. That's your
this
job.
is
That's why
going
they
to
come to
stop
you.
effective immediately. You know,
Yeah.
yeah. So, Zian, you want to talk about that? So I should put my camera. I'm shaking the camera off the top.
Yes, it is important that we hold our clients and ourselves accountable, and that we practice that accountability so we can bring that energy to the table.
Mhm.
However, as Jonathan said, you want to adjust how firm or how soft you are with each client depending on their individual and unique needs
Mhm.
as a being, and the experiences that they've had unique to them and that are causing their trauma, their mental and emotional blocks and all that.
Mhm.
And also, let me say this back in reference to David Bedrick's approach to unshaming. It's never good to push a client to talk about something that they're not comfortable with, and then telling them that, well, you're never going to heal. That is shaming. That is a shaming practice right there. It's shame inducing, and you're basically saying, well, you're never going to get better if you don't talk about this, because what you're doing is you're undermining the inherent level of intelligence
Mhm.
concerning trust that they have for themselves.
Mhm.
They are intelligence inside them that tells them not to talk about this, not to go there.
Mhm.
And you have to honor that, and you have to allow them to feel that they can trust that aspect of themselves that
Mhm.
says, don't go into this yet. Don't go too deep. Don't
Right.
let's not delve to that area of our trauma and our experience yet. So when you do that and you say, well, you're never going to heal, and you instill that in them, you're shaming them, and you're undermining that essential level of trust
Yeah.
that is going to eventually break down and dissolve that shame,
Mhm.
that's trauma.
Mhm.
So yeah, and for me, I feel that I could be wrong, but I'd like to believe that when somebody does commit to working with me, that they have that there has been a connection and a level of trust that has been established
Mhm.
that will gradually go deeper. And again, I could be wrong, and I could be overestimating myself, but I feel that trust is already there, and it's only going to deepen. But and you know, like I said, maybe the trust isn't there at the level that I think it is, but but also it's going to deepen, and that level of trust is going to increase.
Well, as Maddie has said, and then we'll do a round robin where you can share how people get a hold of you, that they have to give themselves permission to cooperate with you in the process, in the exercise. And if they don't trust you, or you're pushing them harder than they're ready to go, they'll give up. You know, you haven't produced a result now. And so it's a cooperative process. Sometimes I'll say to people, imagine that I'm teaching you how to hit a fastball in a baseball game. I don't hold the bat. You do. I tell you, you need to see the seams on the ball as it's coming to you, and that you have to be in a swing by the time you've identified the seams, or the ball will go right by you. And you need to put a little more weight on your back foot. I can give you this kind of advice. You have to swing the bat and hit the ball. Like, this is your job. And so if you're not up for doing that work, coaching might not make sense. So Maddie, how do people find you? And do you have final thoughts?
I was going to comment on that, because, you know, if in many of my sessions, and I'm sure many people get this as well, because people need different things. So some of my sessions can be all of those things combined. You know, because you may get someone and you start off gentle and slow, and then bring up the emotions and the stuff that's really, really deeply hurting them, you know, and allow that. And then as soon as the crying energy comes and begins, then you've got an alchemization on that. But then there's the bit where you have to say, right, shut the F up, pull up your knickers and be big. You know, it's time for you now to actually put on the big boy pants and address these issues properly. And so it can go through these different dum. And what Jonathan was referring to there, it reminded me of my teacher, you know, Andrew. His terminology is the colloquial now. We meet people in the colloquial now, and that is whatever it is, whatever language, whatever frequency, whatever is used in that moment, in that now moment, to create that resonance between the two of you and to actually create a connection. And it's backwards and forwards as well, isn't it? You know, but sometimes exactly. Sometimes there'll be times where my language, always my language is very, very, has to be, you know, has to be thought and considered. But sometimes it will require gentle language or more sort of spiritual-esque language to gain somebody's trust. Whereas other times that stuff won't work. And you have to drop the F-bomb in here and there, show a little bit of character and personal, and then they. So you have to kind of read people to be able to get that trust. But generally, if you know what you're talking about and you do a good job, and you're friendly and respectful, most people will have a certain element of trust for you, and then the rest is just digging deep. I mean, most people, when they come to you, they already have an issue, you know. That's the only problem. As a therapist, where it comes to when you delve into energy work or psychic work or any of this kind of stuff, is that you're going to get people there who've got something to prove. And this is something completely different. They've come with a complete agenda. There's not actual, what's my inner issues? It's the agenda. And then you can find
cooperation. Yeah, it's not an honest effort.
Exactly.
Well, so Matthew, how do we find you?
Okay, so if you want to get hold of me or just check out some of my work, go to newera.org.uk, newera.org.uk.
I'll make sure it's in the description also, so they can click on a link. And I know you have a free course on there that's fantastic, so people should go take a look. How about for you, Jonathan? Is the best way to reach you through Instagram?
As of now, yes. Jonathan R Coaching. That's just like the way it sounds. Jonathan
I'll
R
include
Coaching.
the Instagram link in our description.
And just one last thought that I was actually, based on the level of trust that I have to build with my clients. The first thing is that I don't take just anybody. It has to be someone that I want to, like,
you need a fit or you're wasting time.
Because I'm going to waste my time and I have so many fun things to do instantly. But let's say someone needs my help and is willing to work with me, it will be my pleasure to help them. And it's so intimate work that, I mean, my work implies like having someone laying down on their bed. So it's like, it starts as simple as I can work with you over a phone call. If you feel comfortable with video, I can use video. If you don't feel comfortable with video, we can just use the phone. You can be laying down or you can be sitting. So it starts that way. Just have them feel as comfortable as they can feel.
Mhm.
And once they're feeling comfortable, then I can work with them because they trust you.
The
And
barriers come down a little bit. You can,
yeah,
yeah.
so it's a very intimate process.
Mhm.
And that's why it has to be with someone that is going to appreciate it, because I'm putting my life energies into the process. So it's if they decide to, they can go to Jonathan or Coaching on Instagram, and also a live design on the website. I am also there.
Yes,
They can
yes.
reach out. Of course,
Livedesign.org. Yes, join us for 30 days for
livedesign.org.
free. Thanks, Jonathan. So Zian, tell us about how people get a hold of you.
So my handle is the same across all social media platforms: TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Heavenly Wisdom Coaching. You can, as Jonathan also said, you can find me on the ALD community website as well.
Mhm.
You can reach out to me through Gmail at HeavenlyWisdom.Coaching@gmail.com.
I'll include that link at the bottom. Great. Well, I think we did a good job about exploring, coaching versus therapy. I know all the people I've referred to you have been very happy. So I'm delighted that you guys could chime in today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. We could have kept that conversation going for a couple more hours.
I know.
So
Well,
much to talk about.
we'll see you again next time.
Yeah, we'll do another one.
Thank you so much for being a part of the roundtable. Okay, guys. Bye-bye.